What's up everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and welcome back to another video on the Zyphonium channel. Now there's one thing I need to tell you. If you don't like within the next 10 seconds, then your teacher is just gonna go up to you and stab you with a pencil. Okay. COPPA, you hear that? This is not child friendly. Okay, anyways. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about something crazy that happened when I was in 8th grade. There's a lot of background information that I should give you, so let's talk about that first. So, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, when I was 12 to 14 years old, I went to a charter school, and at the time I thought it was the craziest school ever. There was always some kind of thing that everyone was talking about, whether it's a disease on the school campus or another teacher getting fired. There was always something happening. And when I say teachers getting fired, I mean the teachers were always constantly being replaced. And I mean, mostly for bad reasons, but there was also some good teachers who were left for good reasons. And that brings us to today's story. Now for 7th grade and the beginning of 8th grade, I had this really good science teacher. I guess we can call him Mr. Goodman. That's not his actual name. I'm not going to use actual names in this story. I'm just going to make up random names. Goodman, because he was a good man. Well, he is a good man. I don't think he's dead. I haven't heard from him. Okay. But he was a really good science teacher. He was constantly using different teaching styles. I kid you not, it would have been very difficult to get bored in that class. Eventually, he got a new job opportunity. He had the opportunity to go somewhere better. He never actually told us what it was, because he was trying to keep it a secret. But you know, if you're a really good teacher, and you get a better job opportunity, why not take it? I mean, I can't really blame him. But what are you gonna do? Tell him to stay in a school that's, not the best? And on the last day, he had us do a Diet Coke Mentos experiment. He explained the science behind it and all that type of stuff. And the next day, I was actually very surprised to see a new teacher. Now to be fair, Mr. Goodman gave them enough notice that they could find a replacement teacher. But at my school, usually they would take forever to find any replacement. So the fact that they had a new teacher lined up on the first day after he changed jobs, that was just a new record. I was happy to see this, or I should not say happy, I was optimistic. I didn't have Mr. Goodman as my science teacher anymore, but was there really any reason to be pessimistic at this point? And this new teacher, I'll probably just call him Mr. Badman. The complete opposite. In 8th grade, it was my duty to try to get on the good side of every teacher. Not, necessarily for grades, but you don't really want to have teachers hating you. I wasn't trying to be a perfect student, if you know what I mean, but I definitely wanted to have a good reputation. So, I participated in class, I paid attention closely to every lesson, so I thought everything was going well. A lot of the other students in the class, they didn't exactly like him, but they also didn't have too much of a reason to hate him. And then one day, it all came to a tipping point for me. So in the United States, we have Thanksgiving, and we have 3 days off of school for Thanksgiving, or a 5-day weekend. I know in some school districts they do it where you have the entire week off, but the charter school I went to was following my school district, and we had the 3 days off. So on the Tuesday, the last day of school before the break, it was just a regular class. I was maybe like the second or third person to leave the class. And then the Monday when we came back, there was a test out of nowhere. I never heard of this test. I was always on top of everything. I was trying to be a good student. But how did I never hear of this test? I asked some of my classmates because I found out about it earlier in the day, fortunately. And they said that he announced it at the end of the class. Or in other words, if I had stayed in the room for maybe 10 seconds, I would have heard about it. So I had to do a lot of last-minute studying, and I was pretty worried for this test. When the test actually came around, there were some questions on topics that I had never seen before. And keep in mind, I actually pay attention in class. I've actually read through the chapter in the book before, and there was something on the test that I have never heard of. When we broke for lunch, which was still during the science class, closer to the end of it, and I asked all my classmates, none of them have ever heard of it either. They were all confused, and quite frankly, all of them thought that they were doing pretty badly on the test. On the actual test, I tried politely telling the teacher that the material that he was testing us on, or at least one particular question, was on something that was not in the book. And I thought nothing much of it, I knew for a fact that no one had ever heard of that specific topic, so I had to point it out. The next class, when he had everything graded, the teacher called me out on that. He said that I was a liar, and that the material was actually in the book. Now, maybe the material from that one question was in the book, but as far as the actual chapter we were studying is concerned, no one had ever heard of it. No one. I literally asked everyone in the class. No one. I repeat, no one. Okay, I'm saying no one too much. Okay. I blushed a little, because what are you supposed to do? What was I supposed to say? Oh, the entire class thinks you're crazy? When we broke for lunch that day, my classmates who were there, they came up to me saying that I was in the right. They didn't really agree with the teacher. But that's when I knew that Mr. Badman was a bad teacher. He explained everything that needed to be explained, but he wasn't the best at it. And now he had put material on a test that he had never taught. I felt like the entire rest of the school year in that class was going to be a pain. And keep in mind, it was only late November. We all still had an entire half of the school year to put up with Mr. Badman. That was just way too much. There was no other class that I disliked more than that science class. And that's saying something, because before Mr. Badman, when Mr. Goodman was still teaching the class, it was one of my favorite classes. Just goes to show how drastically things can change teacher to teacher. After that test, I was a bit worried. My grade dropped from a 111 to a 102. You're wondering how that happened. That's because Mr. Goodman gave us extra credit for memorizing elements of the periodic table, and I memorized 87, apparently. But if this kept up for the few weeks we had remaining, the bad grades could actually have an impact. I went through class for about another week, until one day there was a substitute. The substitute teacher informed us that Mr. Badman had actually stabbed a student. From what I heard, here's essentially what happened. So there was an earlier class, and that class was not the most well behaved, it was pretty chaotic, and there were some students who just would not listen to the teacher. There was this one kid who got out of his seat to sharpen a pencil, and Mr. Badman told him to sit down. He didn't listen, so Mr. Badman grabbed the pencil, and there was a tug-of-war fight between this one pencil. Now that was a terrible idea. As Mr. Badman and the student were fighting over this one pencil, Mr. Badman accidentally stabbed the student, and there was blood coming out. After that happened, the student, with no hesitation whatsoever, ran to the administration office and told them what happened. We also got to go to lunch earlier during the class that day, and we were hanging out, talking about the teacher, and then, right through the window of the cafeteria, there we saw him, Mr. Badman. He was in the parking lot, walking to his car. He pulled out and left in an instant. Everyone in the cafeteria was cheering. That goes to show you how bad of a reputation Mr. Badman had. Even the vice president of the student council was cheering. And that's saying something. We never heard from him again. We ended up getting a much better science teacher after that, who was the wife of a teacher who already had a pretty good reputation at the school. Needless to say, everything worked out in the end. Oh, and I should also say that the school administration actually reverted our grades back to how they were before Mr. Badman, so I got to keep my 111, hooray! Now this was an experience unlike any other. While I definitely will say that I've had some pretty bad teachers, I haven't really had any teachers that I dislike the same way as Mr. Badman. Anyways, that's it for this story. I hope you never have a teacher like that. This is a teacher you never want to have. You never want to have a Mr. Badman at your school. Besides that, if you hated it, don't forget to leave a dislike. Join my Discord, link is in the description, and follow me on Twitter at ZyphonYT. Besides all that, be sure to check out some of my other videos. On the left, there's a Storytime video about my main channel and how a certain event called Minecraft Monday really helped it. The video on the right is random. This is my second video. I don't have 2 videos to advertise to you at this point in time, but trust me, in the future that's how it's gonna work. Anyways, that's it. See ya, peace.